If you don't trust me hanging out with my ex every weekend, maybe we should just divorce. That's what Jenna told Cole one night over dinner, smirking, certain she still held all the cards. What she didn't know was that her quiet husband had already put a plan in motion that would leave her with nothing but bags on the sidewalk and a lesson she'd never forget. Cole Harrington wasn't the kind of man who made scenes. Quiet, consistent, and dependable. That's how most people would describe him. He worked in IT for a logistics firm in Austin, Texas, never missed a deadline, and rarely raised his voice. He wasn't flashy, but he was solid. Jenna used to say that was what she loved about him, that he made life feel safe, predictable. But lately, predictable had become a weapon. Friday nights used to mean takeout and movie marathons. Now Jenna was gone before the Uber even arrived, dressed for catching up with old friends. The name Ryan Brooks kept coming up, her ex-boyfriend from college, the one who once drove a convertible and lost everything in a failed startup. Jenna swore it was all innocent. He's part of the friend group, she'd say, like that erased the past. You don't trust me? Cole never accused her outright. He just listened, watched. One Saturday evening, he found the answer he'd been trying to ignore. A photo on Instagram. Jenna laughing in a dimly lit rooftop bar, her head tilted back, drink in hand, and next to her, Ryan, his hand on her lower back, too familiar, too casual to be innocent. The caption read, "Great night catching up with the crew," but the intimacy in the body language told a different story. She hadn't looked at Cole like that in months. He didn't confront her that night. He waited. Let the image settle. The next evening, while they ate dinner in silence, Cole finally spoke. "I don't think it's appropriate that you spend every weekend with Ryan," he said calmly. "He's your ex. It doesn't sit right with me." Jenna paused, fork halfway to her mouth. Then, without missing a beat, she said, "If you don't trust me, maybe we should just divorce." There was no sadness in her voice, no hesitation, just cold, casual dismissal. Cole blinked. The word hung in the air like static. Divorce. He searched her face, hoping for some sign she was joking. But what he saw was worse than anger. It was indifference, maybe even satisfaction. And then she added the line that would change everything. "If Ryan hadn't gone broke, I never would have married you. He's everything you're not. And now that he's back on top, he wants me again." Cole didn't react. He didn't shout or throw his plate across the room. He simply nodded and whispered, "Okay." She smirked. Thought she'd won something. But what Jenna didn't realize was that her words hadn't just ended an argument. They had ended the marriage. That night, after she went to bed humming some pop song, Cole sat alone in his study. The only sound was the ticking clock above the desk. He opened his laptop and found an old email from Carter Lynn, the regional director who'd once offered him a high-level transfer to Singapore, a job he had declined to stay close to Jenna's family. He had forgotten about the offer. But now it felt like a lifeline. He typed a short reply. "If the position is still available, I'd like to accept. Please advise on next steps." He hovered over the send button for only a second. Click. The email flew off into cyberspace. And just like that, the first domino fell. Cole didn't sleep that night, but he didn't feel tired. He felt clear, focused. His world wasn't falling apart. It was being rebuilt. Jenna just didn't know it yet. The next morning, she was already gone by 10 a.m., off to another brunch with friends. Cole checked his inbox. The reply was there. The Singapore office is still interested. Salary doubled, housing provided, departure within 1 month. He read it twice, then clicked. Confirmed. Please send the paperwork. No more debates. No more begging for respect. Cole had been overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. But he wasn't broken. He was evolving. And the woman who thought she couldn't be replaced was about to find out what happens when you burn bridges with that one person who carried you across them in the first place. The paperwork from Singapore arrived within 2 days. Cole didn't hesitate. He signed everything, scanned the documents, and sent them back. A flight was booked for exactly 4 weeks out. Housing, transportation, orientation. It was all arranged. The new position came with authority, international respect, and a salary Jenna used to dream about. But Cole didn't tell her. He didn't tell anyone. Not his friends, not his coworkers. He went to work every morning like nothing had changed. He stayed late, took extra meetings, said all the right things. But every night he returned home with one goal: finish the exit plan. Jenna's weekend routine continued like clockwork. Every Friday she was out the door before sunset, sometimes tossing out a vague, "Don't wait up" over her shoulder. She never asked what Cole was doing anymore, never noticed that he wasn't asking her anything either. Her silence used to hurt. Now it was useful. He called a discreet realtor, not the flashy kind that advertised homes online with drone footage and open houses. This one worked with corporate buyers, quiet deals, fast closings, no questions. Cole explained what he needed: a sale finalized within 4 weeks, funds wired directly, no public listings. The realtor didn't blink. "I'll have buyers lined up by next week," he said. Next, Cole started preparing the finances. He reviewed every joint account, every credit card. He made a list of the accounts Jenna didn't know about, the ones he'd quietly opened years ago to save for retirement or emergencies. He started shifting money, closing lines of credit, consolidating assets. He didn't touch Jenna's personal cards yet. Timing was everything. At home, he played the part of the tired husband. He didn't argue. He didn't confront. Jenna interpreted his silence as surrender. She started coming home later, stopped pretending. Her phone was never out of her hand, and Ryan's name lit up the screen more than once. Cole noticed. He just never said a word, but he documented everything: photos, screenshots, timestamps. Every time she left with Ryan, every time she returned after midnight, every transaction that wasn't hers. He kept records not for revenge, but to make sure there would be no legal debate when the time came. 3 weeks before his flight, he met with his lawyer. "I want the divorce filed but not served," Cole said. "Hold everything until I give the signal." The lawyer nodded. "We'll have everything prepared. Clean break, no warning." Back at home, Jenna continued her double life, oblivious. Cole sold the house to a quiet investment firm. The buyer wanted it fast and offered full cash with no inspections. Cole agreed immediately. The closing date? Friday morning, the same day as his flight. 2 cars went next: his sedan and Jenna's coupe, the one she begged him for 2 birthdays ago, both listed with a private broker. No dealership, no public posting. Within days, buyers were lined up. The broker promised final sales by the end of the month. Proceeds wired to Cole's account. Evenings passed without conversation. Jenna came and went like she lived alone. Cole stayed focused. Step by step, everything was moving into place. One night, she walked past his study, laughing into her phone. "He doesn't even notice when I'm gone," she said. "Honestly, it's easier this way." Cole didn't flinch. He just looked down at the divorce paperwork, nearly completed. He added his initials on the last page. 2 weeks before departure, his director in Singapore sent a finalized relocation itinerary. First-class ticket, apartment keys ready, a private driver scheduled to meet him at Changi Airport. Orientation set for the following Monday. It was all locked in. He didn't feel nervous. He felt lighter. Each confirmation felt like a chain lifting from his shoulders. The final week came fast. Jenna didn't notice anything. She was too busy living her new life while still standing under the roof Cole paid for. On Wednesday, Cole received 2 messages within 10 minutes of each other. One from the realtor: closing confirmed, locks to be changed Friday noon. The second from the broker: both vehicles sold, wire transfers scheduled. All that remained was timing the final strike. He walked through the house one last time that evening, not out of sentiment, but to make sure nothing was left undone. Financial records filed, duplicate keys removed, personal items packed. The movers were scheduled for Friday at dawn. By mid-morning, everything would be gone. And Jenna? She would be with Ryan, as always. She didn't know it yet, but her time in Cole's life had already expired. All that was left was the reveal. Not through confrontation, not through yelling or fights, just one silent, final message in the empty shell of the life she thought was hers. Friday morning arrived. At 6 a.m., Cole stood by the window, sipping his coffee as the moving truck pulled into the driveway. 3 men stepped out, already pulling gloves on. No words were exchanged. Cole opened the door, handed them the list, and stepped aside. Everything Jenna owned was packed with quiet efficiency. Labeled boxes, sealed bags, suitcases. The movers worked room by room. Shoes, handbags, jewelry, her vanity mirror. Each item wrapped, boxed, and carried out. Nothing personal was left behind. It wasn't spite, it was closure. By 8 a.m., her belongings were stacked at the front gate, just as Cole had requested. A mountain of her former life, now reduced to labeled containers and rolled luggage. The movers left without questions. Cole signed the receipt, then walked back inside. An hour later, the real estate agent arrived with the buyer's representative and the locksmith. Contracts were signed at the kitchen counter. The buyer confirmed the wire transfer. The locksmith changed every lock, front door, side gates, garage. Cole handed over the keys and stepped outside for the last time. No ceremony, no last glance. At 11 a.m., Cole entered the bank. In a private office, he instructed the manager to close every joint account, freeze Jenna's credit cards, and move all assets into his personal holdings. The clerk hesitated for only a moment before tapping away at the keyboard. By noon, the accounts were emptied, the cards voided, and Jenna's financial lifeline cut off. His phone buzzed once more. The car broker confirmed both vehicles had been picked up and the funds deposited. Jenna's luxury coupe, gone. His own sedan, sold. Another thread severed. By 3 p.m., Cole was in the back seat of a car headed for the airport. His carry-on sat beside him. There was nothing else to take, nothing left to say. As the car moved through the city, Cole watched familiar streets pass by, buildings he once saw as permanent markers in his life. Now they were just scenery, background to a chapter already closed. Jenna was still out, likely with Ryan. She had no idea that her home no longer belonged to her, that her car was gone, that her cards wouldn't work, that everything she had taken for granted had disappeared in a single morning. She returned that night. The Uber pulled up to the curb. She stepped out laughing, a shopping bag in hand. Then she stopped. Boxes, luggage, stacked neatly beside the locked gate. She dropped her smile, walked up to the door. Her key wouldn't turn. She tried again, harder. Nothing. She moved to the side gate. Same. Her pulse quickened. She pulled out her phone and dialed Cole, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Still nothing. Neighbors across the street peeked from behind curtains. Porch lights flicked on. Jenna crouched and ripped open one of the boxes, hands shaking. Inside, dresses, folded neatly. Not garbage, not tossed, packed with care. She looked around, eyes wide, breathing hard. Then she grabbed one suitcase and flagged down a cab. An hour later, she stood at a hotel counter, trying to smile through gritted teeth. Just one night, she said. One room. The clerk nodded. Credit card, please. She handed one over. Beep, declined. She laughed nervously and offered another. Beep, declined. Her fingers trembled as she handed over a third. Beep. Ma'am, the clerk said gently, none of these are valid. Jenna froze. The room tilted slightly. She took the cards, muttered something, and backed away from the desk. Out on the street, she stood by the curb, staring at her reflection in the dark hotel window. She tried Ryan's number. Once, twice. Straight to voicemail. She called again. Disconnected. No home, no money, no Cole, no Ryan. At 2 a.m., she gave the cab driver her parents' address. The lights were still on when she arrived. Her mother opened the door in a robe, startled. Her father stood behind her, arms crossed. Jenna? Her mother asked. What happened? She stepped forward, dragging her suitcase behind her. It's Cole, she choked. He locked me out. Everything was gone. The keys don't work. My cards. They're dead. Her parents said nothing for a long moment. Come in, her mother finally whispered. We'll talk in the morning. Jenna didn't sleep. She lay on the old sofa bed in her childhood home, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering every arrogant smirk. Every night she left without explanation. Every message from Ryan she answered, while Cole sat silently beside her. At 8 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Mrs. Harrington, said a man's voice. This is James Keaton, legal counsel for your husband. We need you to come to the office this morning. There are documents you need to receive. What documents? She asked, her voice small. You'll see when you arrive. 10 o'clock. The line went dead. By 10, she sat in a chair across from a man in a tailored suit, eyes red, hands still trembling. He slid an envelope across the desk. She opened it. Divorce papers. And a letter, handwritten. It started simply. Jenna, you thought silence meant weakness. Jenna stared at the letter, her hands trembling as she read each line. Cole's handwriting was calm, deliberate, almost cold in its precision. It wasn't angry. That would have been easier. It was calculated. Final. You mistook silence for surrender, but I was never losing. I was preparing. You were never leaving me. I was always leaving you. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. She reached the final sentence, then started again, as if rereading it would somehow change the outcome. It didn't. The words stayed the same. The lawyer watched silently from across the desk. She looked up. Where is he? Gone, he said simply. As of this morning. Flight to Singapore. He asked me to deliver the documents personally. Everything else is settled. Settled? She echoed. The house is sold. Locks changed. Vehicles liquidated. All joint accounts are closed. The divorce is filed and approved. Your signature isn't required for the split under the no-fault clause. You've been served. The last phrase echoed. You've been served. Jenna clutched the papers, numb. He didn't even say goodbye. The lawyer didn't respond. He slid a card across the desk. If you want to respond legally, your counsel can reach me here. She stood, the envelope clutched tightly in her arms. Outside the office, she leaned against the cold wall, trying to breathe. The city buzzed around her, but it felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. When she returned to her parents' house, she didn't speak. Her father looked up from the newspaper but didn't say a word. Her mother asked if she needed anything. Jenna shook her head and went back to the guest room. That night, she scrolled through Ryan's profile. It had changed. No more tags, no photos of her. His relationship status was hidden. The last message she sent, please call me, remained unread. Her calls went to voicemail. Her texts got no replies. The man who had once been at her side every weekend had disappeared faster than Cole. Over the next few days, Jenna tried everything. She emailed Cole. No reply. She called his former job. He's relocated, HR said. Left last Friday. She messaged mutual friends, but they knew nothing. Cole hadn't told anyone he was leaving. At the bank, she tried using one of her old cards again. Declined. She asked to speak to a manager. When they pulled up the account, the screen was blank. No accounts under your name, the clerk said. She left the branch shaking. Her phone bill bounced the next day, then her gym membership, then the boutique investment she'd been bragging about. All of it funded by Cole. All of it shut off. She hadn't just lost a husband. She'd lost her lifestyle. She begged her parents for help. Her father offered her a part-time job at his hardware store reluctantly. You'll need something to do, he said. You can't just sit around. The shame cut deeper than the silence. Within a week, she went from rooftop dinners and shopping bags to shelving paint cans and sweeping floors. Some nights she sat on her childhood bed, staring at the walls, wondering how everything had fallen apart so fast. And then the comments started. It began with a single post, a video uploaded to a relationship advice channel. Someone had summarized the story. The loyal husband who was betrayed planned his escape in silence and left his cheating wife with nothing. No names, no locations. But the details were accurate. Too accurate. She read the comments. He handled it like a king. That woman got what she deserved. You don't play games with someone's loyalty. One of the top comments had over 10,000 likes. Cold, clean, legendary. She sat frozen, the screen glowing in her lap. People didn't just support Cole. They admired him, celebrated him, turned his escape into an online legend. Her betrayal had become entertainment. Jenna tried to report the video. It was denied. No direct names, no defamation, public interest. People shared the clip on forums, tagged it with quotes from Cole's letter, even mocked her with memes. She changed her profile photo, went private, but it was too late. The story was everywhere. For the first time in her life, Jenna was anonymous, unimportant. She had lost her marriage, her lifestyle, her reputation, and the man she thought she'd broken had built an entirely new life without her. She sat alone at her parents' kitchen table one morning, scrolling through the news on her cracked phone. One article caught her eye. New regional director appointed to lead global expansion at TechBridge, Singapore. There was a photo, Cole, in a suit, smiling, confident. She put the phone down, her hands shaking. Everything she thought she controlled had slipped through her fingers. She used to think she was untouchable. Now she couldn't even touch her own past. The message Jenna had feared most came 3 weeks after the fallout. An email from Cole. Just one sentence. There will be no further contact, no greeting, no explanation. Just a line that finalized what was already reality. She stared at the screen for nearly an hour, then deleted the message, only to regret it 5 minutes later. She wanted to read it again, to feel something. Even pain would have been better than the numbness that had settled into her life. Each day blurred into the next. She woke up in the same room she had left years ago, ate meals in silence across from a father who couldn't look her in the eye, spent hours organizing inventory at a hardware store that smelled like rust and pine cleaner. Her phone barely buzzed anymore. Ryan had vanished completely. Not even a goodbye. The people who once filled her weekends with cocktails and rooftop parties had also moved on. Jenna's name was now attached to a cautionary tale. The woman who bet against her husband and lost everything. She applied for jobs, but her resume was thin. Her boutique had been more of a vanity project than a business, funded by Cole's income. The truth was, she had no career, no network, just a history of treating the one person who supported her like he was disposable. The silence grew heavier with time. Not just Cole's, but everyone's. At night, she scrolled through photos of them from better years. Her birthday dinners, trips they took, gifts he bought, moments she had once dismissed as not enough. But the photos told a different story. She saw a man who had tried again and again, while she grew colder, more entitled. The letter he left with the divorce papers wasn't just a goodbye. It was a mirror, a list of all the things she ignored until they were gone. You wanted freedom, now you have it. That line lingered. She'd wanted to feel special, desired, chosen. But she had already been all of those things. She just didn't value who it came from. Now her days were quiet. Her phone was quiet. Her world was quiet. One afternoon, she saw Cole's name again, this time in a Forbes article. How one man's quiet exit became a masterclass in emotional intelligence and strategic planning. The piece celebrated his promotion, his leadership style, and the way he navigated a personal crisis with discipline and grace. There was no mention of Jenna, just references to a difficult personal decision and a clean break that allowed for growth. She stared at the headline, then closed the article. Even the world had moved on. That weekend, while scrolling through a forum, she came across a post titled, "What's the most legendary way someone got out of a toxic relationship?" The top reply was about Cole. He didn't yell, he didn't cheat, he just rebuilt his entire life behind the scenes and let her walk right into the consequences. It was the most respectful, brutal exit I've ever seen. Underneath were thousands of comments praising him, dissecting the strategy, quoting his letter like it was scripture. Jenna didn't comment. She didn't try to correct the story, because it was true, every word. She had taken a good man for granted, and when he stopped fighting for her, she didn't realize he wasn't giving up. He was preparing to leave. What made it worse wasn't that he walked away. It was that he did it so quietly she didn't even hear the door close. 6 months passed. Jenna still worked at the hardware store, still lived with her parents, no new relationship, no apartment of her own. Her savings had dried up. Her credit was a mess. The glow of her old life had faded completely. She had sent one more message to Cole's old email, a simple one. "I'm sorry. It was never opened." And maybe that was the real punishment. Not the money, not the home, not the humiliation. The real cost was knowing she could never fix what she broke. Across the ocean, Cole was thriving. Promotions, interviews, photos of him at company events. He looked free. People asked him about his past, but he never shared details. He simply said, "Some endings are necessary." And that was enough. Cole never needed revenge. He never needed to destroy her. All he did was remove himself from her chaos and let the consequences play out naturally. And Jenna? She was left with the wreckage she created and no one to blame. She finally understood. You don't win by taking someone for granted. You don't stay on top by humiliating the people who've had your back. And you don't get second chances when the one you betrayed has already moved on without looking back.